Welcome to A History Chapter, where we delve into pivotal moments that have shaped our world. Today, we embark on a journey to the remote, windswept islands of the South Atlantic, the stage for the 1982 Falklands War. The prologue to the Falklands War involves a complex tapestry of historical claims, diplomatic tensions, and geopolitical maneuvers that spanned several decades prior to the outbreak of hostilities in 1982. The Falkland Islands, located in the South Atlantic Ocean, have been the subject of sovereignty disputes between Britain and Argentina for centuries, with the roots of the modern conflict traceable back to the colonial era. So let's discuss first the matter of the conflict. The Falkland Islands were first sighted by an English navigator, John Davis, in 1592, but it was not until 1690 that the first recorded landing was made by an English captain, John Strong. The French established the first settlement, Port Louis, on East Falkland in 1764, under the command of Louis-Antoine de Bougainville, unaware of the British claims to the islands. In 1765, the British, led by John Byron, claimed sovereignty over the islands, establishing a settlement at Port Egmont on Saunders Island, unaware of the French presence on East Falkland. The Spanish, who had claimed sovereignty over vast territories in the Americas, including the Falkland Islands, by virtue of papal bulls and their colonial empire, protested the French and British settlements. Spain bought the French settlement in 1767 and pressured the British to leave, which they did in 1774, though Britain left behind a plaque asserting its claim to sovereignty. In 1820, following its independence from Spain in 1816, Argentina proclaimed sovereignty over the Falkland Islands, based on the principle of ut possidetis juris, which sought to establish new states' borders along the Spanish colonial administrative boundaries. Argentina established a settlement on the islands in 1826. However, in 1833, Britain expelled the Argentine garrison and reasserted its sovereignty over the Falklands, citing its prior claims and settlement. Argentina has regarded this act as an illegitimate use of force and has maintained that the islands are Argentinian territory inherited from Spain. The dispute simmered throughout the 20th century, with Argentina consistently seeking to assert its claim to the islands through diplomatic channels, including the United Nations. The UK, however, maintained that the islands' residents, who are predominantly of British descent, have consistently expressed a desire to remain British. Throughout the 20th century, the sovereignty dispute simmered, with periods of heightened diplomatic activity. The issue was brought before the United Nations in the 1960s, leading to a series of resolutions calling for the UK and Argentina to seek a peaceful resolution to their dispute. Despite these efforts, negotiations repeatedly stalled, primarily due to the fundamental disagreement over sovereignty. In the years leading up to the war, Argentina was experiencing significant political and economic turmoil, including human rights abuses under a military dictatorship that had seized power in 1976. The junta, led by General Leopoldo Galtieri from December 1981, faced mounting internal pressure and diminishing public support. The immediate prelude to the war, in early 1982, was marked by a series of incidents and miscalculations that escalated tensions. In late March, the Argentine military junta ordered the invasion of the South Georgia and the South Sandwich Islands, a British territory, as part of Operation Rosario. This action was partly intended to assert sovereignty over the Falklands and rally public support around the government. The situation escalated when the Argentine workers raised the Argentine flag on South Georgia, leading to a confrontation with British Antarctic Survey personnel. The British government sent a diplomatic message demanding the withdrawal of the Argentine personnel, which was ignored. Both Argentina and the UK miscalculated each other's responses in the lead-up to the invasion. Argentina believed that the UK would not respond militarily to an invasion of the Falklands, partly due to the island's perceived strategic insignificance and the logistical challenge of projecting military power over such a distance. For its part, the UK may have underestimated the Argentine junta's determination to proceed with the invasion, despite diplomatic signals and the mobilization of the Argentine fleet. The situation escalated when the Argentine workers raised the Argentine flag on South Georgia, leading to a confrontation with British Antarctic Survey personnel. The British government sent a diplomatic message demanding the withdrawal of the Argentine personnel, which was ignored. Both Argentina and the UK miscalculated each other's responses in the lead-up to the invasion. Argentina believed that the UK would not respond militarily to an invasion of the Falklands, partly due to the island's perceived strategic insignificance and the logistical challenge of projecting military power over such a distance. For its part, the UK may have underestimated the Argentine junta's determination to proceed with the invasion, despite diplomatic signals and the mobilization of the Argentine fleet. On April 2, 1982, Argentine forces invaded the Falkland Islands, quickly overwhelming the small British military garrison stationed there. The invasion was met with international condemnation, but it initially enjoyed widespread support within Argentina, boosting the military junta's domestic standing. The British government, led by Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher, responded decisively to the invasion. Viewing the Argentine action as a clear violation of international law and an unacceptable act of aggression, the UK dispatched a naval task force to the South Atlantic to retake the islands. After the invasion, Argentine forces quickly secured control over the Falkland Islands. The small British military garrison stationed there was overwhelmed, and Governor Rex Hunt was taken prisoner but later expelled from the islands. Argentina asserted its sovereignty over the islands, which it calls the Malvinas, and quickly began to consolidate its position, flying in additional troops and equipment. On April 5th, the British Naval Task Force was sent. It was central to the UK's military strategy, providing the necessary platform for projecting military power over the 8,000 miles from Britain to the Falklands. The task force included 2 aircraft carriers, HMS Hermes and HMS Invincible, which were crucial for air operations, including the deployment of Harrier GR-3S and Sea Harriers. These aircraft were instrumental in providing air cover for the fleet and ground forces, despite being outnumbered by Argentine aircraft. Argentina's air forces, including the Air Force and Navy, played a significant role in the conflict, utilizing French-made Mirage 3 fighters, Israeli-made Dagger fighters, a variant of the Mirage 5, and American-made A-4 Skyhawks. Argentina also deployed Super-Étendard aircraft capable of launching Exocet missiles, which represented a significant threat to the British fleet. On May 4, 1982, the destroyer HMS Sheffield was struck by an Exocet missile launched by an Argentine Super-Étendard. This marked the first time a ship was sunk by a missile launched from an aircraft in combat, underscoring the lethality of modern anti-ship missiles. Sheffield's loss was a significant blow to the Royal Navy and highlighted the vulnerability of surface ships to missile attacks. HMS Coventry, a British destroyer, was sunk on May 25th, along with the Atlantic Conveyor, a merchant vessel converted for military use. The Conveyor was carrying vital supplies, including helicopters, which were lost with the ship. These losses underscored the effectiveness of Argentine air attacks and the importance of air defense. The nuclear-powered submarine HMS Conqueror played a key role in the conflict, sinking the Argentine cruiser ARA General Belgrano on May 2nd. This sinking resulted in the loss of 323 lives and was a controversial but strategically significant moment in the war, effectively neutralizing the Argentine surface fleet's threat to the British task force. The air battles over the Falklands were intense, with British Sea Harriers engaging Argentine aircraft in a series of dogfights. The Harriers, using their vertical short takeoff and landing (VSTOL) capabilities, operated effectively from the carriers and improvised forward operating bases. Despite being outnumbered, the Harriers, equipped with AIM-9L Sidewinder missiles, proved highly effective against the Argentine Air Force and Navy aircraft. The British also suffered losses, with several helicopters and Harriers being shot down or damaged. Both sides faced significant anti-aircraft challenges. The British deployed naval air defense systems, such as the Sea Dart missile, to protect the fleet, while ground forces used Rapier missile systems and small arms to defend against Argentine air attacks. Argentina utilized its own surface-to-air missile systems and anti-aircraft artillery, posing a constant threat to British aircraft. The air and naval engagements of the Falklands War demonstrated the evolving nature of modern warfare, with both sides adapting to rapidly changing tactical situations. These engagements had a significant impact on the outcome of the conflict, ultimately allowing the British forces to establish air superiority and logistical support necessary for the successful recapture of the Falkland Islands. The first major British military action was the landing at San Carlos Water on East Falkland on May 21st. Despite the initial surprise, Argentine forces quickly responded with repeated airstrikes against the British ships and troops in and around San Carlos Water. The Argentine Air Force and Navy launched daring and aggressive attacks using fighter bombers, including A-4 Skyhawks, Mirage 3 fighters, and Dagger aircraft, often flying at low altitudes to avoid radar detection. The British forces, anticipating air attacks, had deployed a range of air defense systems, including Sea Harrier fighters operating from aircraft carriers HMS Hermes and HMS Invincible, and surface-to-air missile systems such as the Sea Wolf, Sea Dart, and Rapier missiles, as well as conventional anti-aircraft artillery. The Harriers were particularly effective in engaging Argentine aircraft, though the intensity and number of air attacks presented a significant challenge. The British naval vessels in San Carlos Water became prime targets for the Argentine air raids. While the British managed to shoot down several Argentine aircraft, they also suffered losses and damage to several ships. HMS Ardent was sunk, and HMS Argonaut, HMS Brilliant, HMS Broadsword, and others were damaged. Despite these losses, the British succeeded in maintaining control of the beachhead and continued to offload troops and supplies. The successful establishment of a beachhead at San Carlos was a turning point in the Falklands War. It allowed British forces to secure a foothold on the islands from which they could launch operations to recapture key positions, leading eventually to the liberation of Stanley. The battle for Goose Green took place on May 28 and 29, 1982, and was one of the first major land engagements of the Falklands War. Goose Green was a small settlement in East Falkland, which had been seized by Argentine forces early in the invasion. The area held strategic value as it controlled access to the southern part of East Falkland, and its capture was essential for securing the British flank and enabling further offensive operations. British forces, primarily composed of the 2nd Battalion, Parachute Regiment, 2 Para, were tasked with retaking Goose Green. Despite being outnumbered and facing well-entrenched Argentine positions, the British launched a night assault. The battle was intense and protracted, lasting over 14 hours. It involved close-quarters combat and demonstrated the harsh weather conditions and challenging terrain of the Falklands. The turning point came when Lieutenant Colonel H. Jones, the commanding officer of 2 Para, led a courageous charge against an Argentine machine gun post, for which he was posthumously awarded the Victoria Cross. His action inspired his men to press the attack. Eventually, the Argentine forces, isolated and unable to receive reinforcements or resupply, surrendered. The British victory at Goose Green was significant, resulting in the capture of over 1,000 Argentine prisoners and providing a morale boost to the British forces. It demonstrated the effectiveness of aggressive infantry tactics and the importance of leadership in combat. The liberation of Stanley, occurring on June 14, 1982, marked the culmination of the British campaign to retake the Falkland Islands. After securing key positions around the capital, including the battles at Mount Longdon, Two Sisters, and Tumbledown, British forces were positioned to enter Stanley. The approach to Stanley was heavily fortified, and Argentine forces had prepared defensive positions anticipating a direct assault. However, the encirclement and isolation of Argentine positions by British forces, combined with the psychological impact of the British victories in the surrounding battles, played a critical role in the final outcome. On the morning of June 14th, after a series of negotiations and realizing their untenable position, the Argentine commander in Stanley, General Mario Menendez, agreed to surrender to Major General Jeremy Moore, the British Land Forces commander. The surrender was formalized later that day, leading to the end of hostilities. The liberation of Stanley was a decisive moment in the Falklands War, effectively marking the end of Argentine resistance and confirming the British recapture of the islands. The victory was achieved through a combination of amphibious operations, air support, naval gunfire, and ground combat, showcasing the flexibility and adaptability of British forces. The Falklands War, with the surrender of Argentine forces in the Falkland Islands, had profound and lasting effects on both the United Kingdom and Argentina, as well as on international military and diplomatic practices. The conflict, although brief, was intense, and left a significant legacy in terms of military lessons, political outcomes, and the lives of those directly involved. After the war, the British administration returned to the islands. The war resulted in significant human loss, with 649 Argentine military personnel, 255 British military personnel, and 3 Falkland Islanders losing their lives. The psychological impact on the veterans and the families of the deceased was profound and long-lasting. Both countries also suffered material losses, including ships, aircraft, and military equipment, with the financial cost running into billions of dollars. In the UK, the successful retaking of the Falkland Islands bolstered the popularity of Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher and her government. The war was seen by many as a just cause, defending the self-determination of the Falkland Islanders against foreign aggression. The military victory contributed to a resurgence of national pride and had implications for the subsequent general election, which the Conservative Party won with an increased majority. The war also led to a reassessment of British defense policy, particularly regarding the importance of naval power and the need to maintain strong armed forces. In Argentina, the defeat in the Falklands War had immediate and dramatic political repercussions. The loss discredited the ruling military junta, which had initiated the conflict partly to divert public attention from domestic economic and political crises. The war's failure intensified public and internal opposition to the military regime, leading to its collapse and the restoration of democracy in 1983. The return to democratic governance marked the beginning of a new chapter in Argentine history. Although the issue of the Falklands remained a sensitive and unresolved topic in Argentine politics and society. For the Falkland Islanders, the war affirmed their desire to remain a British overseas territory. Post-war, the UK significantly strengthened the islands' defenses and infrastructure, ensuring their capability to deter any future aggression. The war also solidified the islanders' sense of community and identity, with a renewed commitment to their rights to self-determination being recognized internationally. The Falklands War provided several important military and strategic lessons. It highlighted the importance of air power, naval forces, and logistical support in modern warfare, as well as the vulnerabilities to anti-ship missiles and the utility of vertical short takeoff and landing (VSTOL) aircraft like the Harrier. The conflict also underscored the significance of satellite and signals intelligence, electronic warfare, and the need for rapid, flexible response capabilities. On the international stage, the war drew attention to the issue of colonial legacies and sovereignty disputes. It prompted discussions within the United Nations and other international forums about the principles of self-determination and territorial integrity. The UK and Argentina continued to dispute sovereignty over the Falkland Islands, but the conflict has remained a diplomatic rather than a military issue. As we close this chapter on the Falklands War through the lens of history, we've seen how the events of 1982 unfolded. While a brief moment in history, It offers enduring lessons on the complexities of national identity, sovereignty, and the human cost of geopolitical disputes. It reminds us of the importance of diplomacy, the value of peace, and the profound impact of history on contemporary politics and international relations. Thank you for joining us on A History Chapter as we navigated the storied past of the Falklands War. Remember to like and share this video with friends if it was interesting for you. And if you are looking for more history topics, consider to subscribe the channel. History is not just about understanding our past, it's about learning for our future. Stay tuned for more chapters that unravel the mysteries, the struggles, and the triumphs that have defined our world. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep the pages of history turning.